As we mentioned earlier, Vice President Mike Pence attended a September 11th memorial service today at the Pentagon. Our next guest was inside the building during the attack. Joining me now by Skype from the Heritage Foundation is Steve Bucci, visiting fellow with the Allison Center for Foreign and National Security Policy. Steve also served as a top Pentagon official in the George W. Bush administration. Steve, welcome back to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's good to be back on.
Describe what that day was like for you.
Well, it started as a pretty normal day. We thought it was going to be like all the others. We had a group of legislators in to meet with the Sept for breakfast. Then we saw the first plane hit up in New York and thought, my gosh, what a tragedy. Then we saw the replay, except it wasn't a replay. It was the second plane hitting. And we thought, oh gosh, this is not an accident. This is an attack. And that's when we began planning to try and figure out what was going on. And then our own building was hit.
And in the days that followed, as a top Pentagon official, you were involved in the decision-making process. Give us a sense of how the military crafted our strategy to go after the terrorists right after that.
Well, the first thing was trying to figure out who had done it. That day was before they claimed it. Then once Al-Qaeda made the claim, that confirmed what our intelligence had told us, and we began planning the best way to respond. Initially, reaching out to the Taliban government to say, hey, give us these guys that have done this. They're criminals. When they said no, and President Bush said, you either give them to us or we're going to come after you, then we started the planning to take down the Taliban government, pre-positioning forces in some of the countries around Afghanistan, and then the attacks began.
And of course, 9/11 dramatically changed so many aspects of American life as well, including our nation's approach to terrorism more widely here. Where do you think we are in the wider war on terrorism 17 years later?
Well, sadly, we're still at the point where we're defending ourselves. We're concerned every day that another attack might occur. That level of vigilance, unfortunately, is probably never going to end. You can't really eliminate ideologies like this in a manner we'd love to. So it requires continual vigilance, continual effort on the intelligence front and the military and law enforcement fronts to protect our people and our interests. That's going to go on for a long time. I know Americans don't like to hear that, but that's the reality of this kind of fight. It is not going to end in the foreseeable future.
In fact, Europe has seen an uptick in lone wolf attacks. Do you think we could see another major terror attack in the U.S. on U.S. soil in our lifetime?
Well, if we get sloppy and complacent, we definitely could. Up to this point, our military intelligence and law enforcement folks are working unbelievably diligently to keep that from happening. We're not going to back off, but if the American people say, hey, enough's enough, let's stop all these precautions, we could open ourselves up for another event. I hope we don't do that because there are enemies still out there, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, others, who very, very definitely want to still hurt us. So we've got to keep the shield up and stay active against them to protect our people.
Like you say, vigilance is so important. Steve Bucci, visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks for having me, and God bless.
You too.